Welcome to the MAHA Revolution. We're working to rebuild trust after a generation of corruption that has failed the American people. More than 70% of Americans now suffer from chronic disease. So the AP came out yesterday with an article that was on the newswire. It went out to hundreds of different newspapers, and they claimed that MAHA is anti-science, anti-vaccines, that we're riddled with conspiracy theories. And I just wanted to clarify something there. So these are big food, big ag, big pharma talking points. Some food, drugs, vaccines, pesticides are delivery mechanisms for toxins, backed by fraudulent science, science that's been for sale. And we want people to engage in real science. And that means reading labels, questioning corporate propaganda, questioning the marketing materials that are masquerading as real science. And so these things are part of their marketing plan, meant to discredit people who are doing real work. And so, when you question fake science, that's doing real science. So we're not trying to support anybody's profits. We're not trying to protect anybody's corporate profits. We're looking out to defend the American people and to make Americans healthy. So in the MAHA movement, we want all perspectives. We want people who disagree with us to engage in dialogue with us. We want debate. We want nuance. And so contrary to what the AP and the New York Times say, we're not selling anything other than radical transparency and gold standard science. So you're going to hear today from somebody who was the head of the CDC. You're going to hear from somebody who was the inventor of the original mRNA vaccine technology platform. And then you're going to hear from leading researchers about drugs, about farming, about vaccines, about metabolic health. So these are the people who are doing real science. And these are the people you should listen to. These are the people who are going to help rebuild real trust in our government officials and on public health in general. So welcome. And next up is Dr. Eric Berg. But before that, we're just going to show a quick clip of Tony Robbins and a video that he sent us. Thanks so much.
Hey everybody, it's Tony Robbins. Listen, I just want to reach out and take a moment to thank all of you, not just for being here, but being the kind of person who really cares deeply, not just about life, but about people, about truth, about health, and about the future of this country. And that's why this moment right now matters so much. Because let's be real, we're in the middle of a war, aren't we? A war for people's minds and ultimately their health. And that war is being fought not just in hospitals or on Capitol Hill. It's being fought in living rooms. It's on phones. It's on podcasts. It's on scrolls. It's being fought through basically scrolls and shares, and people's beliefs can be shaped by all the content they're taking in. And right now, they're getting terrible input. And that's where you come in. Right now, you hold the power to reverse what I think is the greatest health catastrophe in the human history, at least for the past 50 years. Big pharma and big agro have systematically poisoned our food supply, and they try to convince us we need their drugs to survive. The result is that 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, 88%. And cancer rates have exploded. Diabetes has become an absolute epidemic. Depression and anxiety, they're destroying our children. And while families are suffering, these corporations are making trillions of dollars off our sickness. But here's what they never counted on. You magnificent disruptors, you influencers who refuse to stay silent when America starts dying from the inside out. Every single piece of content you guys create is a weapon against their lies. When you show people how to eat real, how foods make a difference, how to move their bodies, how to reclaim their health, you're not just getting views, you're saving lives. And you're really proving, I think, that the human body is designed to heal, not just survive on some pharmaceuticals, right? So you don't need to have a million followers to make a difference, and I know many of you have more than that. You need truth, you need passion, you need alignment. And I think when we speak together with a voice of conviction, when we share the real breakthroughs, the real science, the real human victories, When we wrap that into a story that opens people's hearts, we can really shift what's possible. We help shift people's beliefs, and beliefs control their actions. So think of it this way, this is how every movement really starts. It's a small group of committed people who align around values that are armed with the truth and are unwilling to stay silent. So I want you to change the world. I don't want you to. You're already doing it. But together, this is how we make it happen. So what's going to happen? Each week, you're going to get clear, powerful messages from Bobby, from HHS, from their team. And your mission is to amplify it, to make it your own, to speak from your soul, to be bold, to be relentless, to be loving, to be loud, because this is how we make the change. This is bigger than politics. It's bigger than any one person. This is about rewriting the story of health for our families, for our communities, for humanity. And, we all heard that quote. It's been overused, but, the quote that says, never doubt, that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. It might be corny to say it, but it's still true. It's not just a saying. So let's go out together. Let's lead a health revolution. And I just want to say thank you for using your influence for a higher good. I look forward to seeing how we impact the world here, this country together. And I'm just sending you my love and my respect for all that you're doing. Blessings to everyone.
Yeah, Tony Robbins is just so right there. And, the deal here, the thing that we really need to do is change the world. And one of the people who's out there creating content, telling the truth, working day and night to help the MAHA movement is Dr. Eric Berg. I'm so happy to bring him on.
Thanks so much, Tony. And I want to just back up what you said. There's really two groups going on. You have the group that wants to keep things the same, maintain status quo. And then you got our group that wants to change things because the statistics are just crashing. One of the mechanisms that Big Pharma and other corporations or big corporate giants are doing is basically they don't have the trust. So they're working through social media. And this is really what you see with a lot of the talking heads out there, not just mainstream media, but also social media. And I'm going to share a small little clip. Just so people know, a lot of these talking points are not purely independent. They're being altered by money. So if you want to roll that clip, Kyle, if you have it queued up.
I have never been compensated by a vaccine company.
He says he doesn't take money from vaccine companies, but according to the government's open database, that's not true. On the official CMS website, the same database that tracks payments from pharmaceutical companies to physicians, Dr. Mikhail Varshavsky, better known as Dr. Mike, has received over $1 million from Abbott Laboratories, one of the world's largest flu vaccine manufacturers. Dr. Mike, please explain how can you say,
I have never been compensated by a vaccine company,
while accepting over $1 million from one of the biggest?
That's just one. The amount of money that's going into social media is in the billions right now. So it's, there's one thing you can say about RFK is you can't buy him. He definitely is an authentic, independent person. And so this is why we trust him, and he's really leading the field. I wanted to take a moment to just share a message with the younger generation who are watching this right now, the teenagers, young adults, people in college, because I want to just tell my story because it relates to why I'm even involved in the MAHA group. When I was a teenager, I was a junk food junkie. The only thing green that I ate was pistachio ice cream and lime green Jell-O. I never ate anything healthy, and I got away with it because, when you're a teenager, you can get away with it. Your metabolism is the best it's ever been, and you can recover. And I had no need to change my diet because I felt fine, at least for a while. And then I got into sports. I did wrestling and track. And with that, you have a bad diet and you have massive exercise. And then you have trying to cut weight. So I was up for 4 years, so 9th grade, 10th, 11th, 12th, I had to cut weight. So I was on a low calorie diet, trying to cut weight and eat junk food and exercise. So it finally caught up with me when I was in 12th grade. my bones are so weak. If you ever heard of the disease called rickets, which is a vitamin D deficiency for children, it's a softening of bones. In adults, it's called osteomalacia. I had that where my bones were so weak. So I started fracturing my bones. I actually fractured my neck in college. So when I started wrestling, and that pretty much took me out. I mean, I was supposed to be the pinnacle of health, but I started to get really, really sick. I went into the military, and I barely could pass the PT test because of the food that they feed you in the military, plus the deprivation of sleep and a lot of overtraining. So anyway, this kind of went on until I went into college. And I justified my diet. I said, I'll eat healthy when I graduate, as I was getting ulcers and started getting really, really sick, chronic fatigue. And then I finally graduated, and then I decided, okay, now I'm going to really be healthy. I'm going to start eating, I'm going to become a vegan. So I started eating beans and drinking kale shakes and tons of carrot juice and whole grains. And I've never before in my life, I just hit bottom, rock bottom. I was so sick. I was consuming all this fiber. I had constipation. My fingers were arthritic. My spine was arthritic. The inside of my eyelids were like bloodshot sandpaper. I had blood sugar issues. I had chronic fatigue syndrome. So this just went on and on for years. And the way I tried to solve it is I did more colon cleanses. Maybe I thought it was toxic, and I started to take herbs for detoxing and all these different things. And I just kept getting worse and worse and worse until one day when I was 28, I decided to eat something what I thought was really toxic, and that was animal meat, actual red meat. I started eating that, and I went on a low carb diet, which is very, very surprising. All the digestive system started working, my bowels started working. All of a sudden, it was like someone took a helmet off my head. I started having energy, and bloodshot issues went away. My arthritis went away. I was like, oh my goodness. In my mind, I was like, why didn't I know about this? Why didn't anyone tell me about this? So if you're a young person watching this right now, please learn from other people's mistakes. And I was definitely made every single mistake in the book. But when you start eating real food, cut down the carbs, especially the starches and the sugars, and actually start consuming animal protein, you'll start to heal. All those detoxification enzymes or mechanisms are made out of protein. And I was literally starving myself of protein. Your biochemistry is protein, your hormones are protein. So I was literally a great test case for exactly what not to do. I did every single mistake in the book. So I just wanted to share that because that drove me into a whole different area of health that now I would never have gotten into health if I didn't get that sick. And so instead of going for things that don't work, like even vitamins, like unless you change your diet, the core diet, and start eating nutrient-dense foods, vitamins won't really work. All these different cleanses won't work. The ability to pull toxins out require protein too. So the importance of that diet is going to be really important. So they're going to be coming out with a new dietary guideline, and I think I'm hoping that it's going to be a lot better than the last one. But I just want to share that to hopefully motivate some younger people to avoid the mistakes and just learn from other people so you don't have to make them.
That's so great. Thank you, Eric. One of the main points of the MAHA movement is that you've been lied to and that it's not your fault and that you can change. You can change your life. You can transform your life by getting real science, by dealing with people who've transformed their own lives and who have a story to tell. So that is Dr. Eric Berg. And it's also Dr. Daniel Pompa, who had his own health journey. He's a leading cellular health expert, teaches practitioners worldwide about advanced detoxification strategies. Very happy to bring you Dr. Daniel Pompa.
Yeah, hey, thank you all. I'm not going to turn my video on because I'm outside and it's not, well, you would love the scene, but I'm in Cabo, but we don't need to make anyone jealous. But I'm so passionate about this. A friend of mine this week, And he's very well known. I love him. And every one of you know who he is. He's a big influencer in the fitness world. And he said this publicly on his podcast and in another interview. But I hope I made an impact. But to piggyback on some of what we're saying of what we're up against. So here's an influencer, and Dr. Berg, you said this before, how many are getting paid? He's not. But no doubt, I think he has the wrong perception of what we're doing here at MAHA. Why? Because of the money being spent on social media and other places to really confuse our message, number one, and really just to add chaos. That's what the enemy does. That's what the adversary does constantly. So you know we're making a difference when that happens. Okay, the conversation went like this. I just have some criticism about where Bobby's focus is and the MAHA group in general. Taking dyes out of the foods and focusing on the chemicals and some of the toxins, the vaccines. I just think we should have more focus on especially telling kids to eat less and move more. Now, I love the move more, okay? I think, exercise, I agree wholeheartedly. But I almost said his name, but I said the eat less. I said, I've been to Italy many times and many other places, and I can tell you that I don't see them pushing food aside, saying I need to eat half of that meal. As a matter of fact, I see them eat to full and enjoy their meal. And I can tell you in Italy, you can tell the tourists from the Italians because you don't see fat people there. And there's a reason for that. Oh, and they say that they eat 20% more carbs. Absolutely better whole foods, grown in better soil, and I think a more nutritious diet. But we also have far less toxins there because of a few chemicals and many more that are outlawed there. So I said to him, it really isn't people's fault in this country for not knowing when to turn it off. Meaning, it is a hormonal problem driven mostly by certain toxins that disrupt hormones like ghrelin, leptin, and most of the hormones even that we store fat and able to turn on and off energy processes in the mitochondria. And so it's, this problem of just trying to eat less is really a hormone problem and further upstream a toxicity issue. And that's the reality. If you look at people today, and I deal with very, very sick and challenged people, like Dr. Berg, I have my own story. And, most of them will tell you, I eat better than all my friends. I eat better than anyone I know. And yet, I still don't feel well. I still don't have energy. I still can't even lose weight. Weight loss resistance, despite diet change, despite exercise, is a new phenomenon. And I can tell you that it's toxin induced. So the bottom line is that Bobby's right on with where he's going. The vaccines are creating incredible chronic disease that I believe we're going to see a shift in the numbers just by what he's doing with vaccines alone. I believe we're going to see a shift in the numbers with what he's doing with the dyes, with fluoride, into the chemicals, the pesticides. He's up against the big giants. The resistance is coming from big pharma, big agriculture, big food, and that means that we're heading in the right direction. But I'm telling you, the resistance is real, it's rich, and we're going to be always fighting against a false narrative. Even like my friend, people with good intentions still hear things on social media and it can drive their belief. I get the questions all the time. Do you think that's right? You think that, and the fact is there's a solid core of us here, I believe, on this call that really are standing for the truth and really have a responsibility to fight against that, the paradigm, the existing paradigm, and also the one that social media and other influencers are going to try to bring against what we're doing. So look, toxins, it's my thing. From pain to purpose, here I am, meaning it's what got me sick. It's what's getting many sick. It's what's keeping people fat. Yes, the food, absolutely. It's delivering a lot of the toxins, but the amount of toxicity, if we look what shifted in the last 50 to 60 years, It is the level of toxins that we are bringing into our bodies. I just want to make one more quick point. Our government bodies tell us this amount of toxin is safe. Do you understand how irresponsible that can be? Because my story went, I got sick on an amount of toxins that most people would be able to detox out of their body. But the fact is that I started in utero with my bucket full from my mother, and my detox pathways were already challenged. And maybe genetically, I even have some pathways that aren't so great, but I wouldn't put myself totally in that category. The point is that way smaller amounts of exposure are going to affect me and other people. So when we look at what we call safe, and when a government body says that amount is safe, for who? When they say that amount of fluoride is safe, based on what and based on whom? And do you even know their accumulation or their detox pathway? So a lot of deception goes into that as well. So anyways, an honor being here, an honor serving, but we have to, and I think Tony said it best, right? We have to join together, and we're going to be continually fighting a narrative that's false. So awesome. Keep up the good work, every one of you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Pompa. Yeah, just to go back to the AP article, the headline for that was anti-science bills hit state houses, stripping away public health protections built over a century. So what I think we're focused on is that those so-called experts, those bills that have been put in place over a century, those were meant to protect corporations. They were meant to protect profits, and they failed the American public. We spend more money than any other country. We have worse health outcomes. We need people who challenge the status quo. And one of the people who really challenges the status quo and has done so throughout COVID and since then, he is, one of the key people in the government now working at the ACIP. But, he's been doing so much good work. I respect him just incredibly. And he's a personal friend, Dr. Robert Malone. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for the honor of calling me a personal friend, Tony, and back at you. It's certainly been an interesting journey for all of us. Today, I'd like to talk about hepatitis B and the hepatitis B birth dose. Now, I have to be a little cautious here because it's likely, I speculate, that that issue of the hepatitis B birth dose may come up yet again at the upcoming ACIP meeting. And I'm not allowed to talk about things that are planned for ACIP. I can say that the president in the recent press conference that we're all aware of here at MAHA suggested that he thinks that the birth dose should be delayed until onset of puberty. I'm talking about the birth dose for hepatitis B. The logic there being that hepatitis B, the bulk of transmission risk in the United States is now within a fairly narrow window of individuals. This includes IV drug abusers and individuals that are involved in promiscuous sexual activities. But historically, hepatitis B had up to 18,000 cases a year in the United States. Those are facts and numbers. Now, back then, that was the peak of hepatitis B was when we were coming off of the Vietnam War. And there was a lot of exposure to endemic hepatitis B in Southeast Asia, which is where it's a major problem. And we also had the repatriation, let's call it, of various individuals and their families from Southeast Asia that had assisted and supported the American war effort. And it's certainly understandable that we brought those Vietnamese back with us after the North Vietnam overwhelmed South Vietnam. And these were people that were loyal to us, just as we repatriated some of the people from Afghanistan that had supported the American effort there. But that was the bulk of hepatitis B. And as I say, it peaked at 18,000, and then it has steadily declined. Part of that decline has to do with the demographics of no longer having that influx of folks from Southeast Asia, including Americans that have been exposed there. But part of it has to do with the birth dose or the hepatitis B vaccine deployment. Initially, it wasn't designed to be or intended to be a birth dose, but frankly, that was implemented by ACIP historically as under the logic that if we can't get them vaccinated at birth, then it gets hard to get them. And also that infants that contract hepatitis B at birth have a very high frequency of developing liver cancer and chronic hepatitis B complications. That's dropped to almost nothing. There are hardly any cases left in the United States at birth. We have efficient screening. And the data now are showing that there are only a couple of other Western nations that still employ birth dose for hepatitis B. The rest of them delay it. And in those couple of cases, even really in most of the cases in the West, in the well-developed economies, the dosing for hepatitis B is considered to be elective and focused. So the data are increasingly clear that the United States policy right now is an outlier, much as the president has suggested. And I just recommend for you this recent hepatitis B article from Trial Site News that's very balanced. No one can criticize it for being anti-vaccine. That asks the question, is universal hepatitis B vaccine at birth justified? And the subtitle, most rich nations say no. I think that their objective data analysis and political analysis is that these products and there's multiple hepatitis B vaccines on the market, they're really not justified here in the United States, given the situation today. They may have been justified historically when we had an incidence of 18,000 per year, but that birth dose is really no longer supportable. So I think we can look forward to a robust discussion at ACIP, and hopefully we will see some progress on this key issue that I think a lot of you are sensitive to. Now, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tony and Dr. Robert Redfield, who is joining MAHA Alliance for the first time in this conference, and is a true hardcore vaccine developer of considerable international note.
Thanks so much. So Dr. Robert Redfield is the former head of the CDC. He, in many ways, is one of the most pro-vaccine people out there. And so he's going to explain the importance of nuance, of, like Dr. Malone said, the idea that we can look at the timing. We can look at going from multivalent vaccines to single vaccines. We can go from looking at whether a certain individual shouldn't be vaccinated. All of this kind of nuance, that's not being anti-vaccine. That's real science. So he's going to explain that you can't have real science without debate, without disagreement, and without looking at every side of the argument. Thanks so much for coming on, Dr. Redfield.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for taking the leadership of MAHA in action. Very, very important. I think our current medical system has evolved so that we really have a disease system. We don't really have a health system. And the beauty of MAHA and what we're trying to do now is how do you sort of change it from a sporadic illness system to a value-based system where we put value on preserving health. Obviously, Kennedy's right on target with some of the areas that he's highlighted. It's hard for me to believe. I spent 23 years in the armed forces at Walter Reed, and when I see 77% of young people can't pass a military medical exam because of illness or obesity, it's really a really sad state to see how health in America has deteriorated to the point that it has. Clearly, going after obesity is a really important target, and looking at the role of processed foods, dyes, and toxins that they may play. Obviously, also the role on some of the sugar beverages and correcting that. I also have a strong interest in focusing on drug use disorder and mental illness as a critical chronic disease that we need to target and to really make incentives for people to pursue health. I've said this publicly, and I'll say it again, and I constantly say it when I'm on the air, that I really do believe that RFK Jr. Will become the most consequential health secretary our nation's ever had. And then we are at a turning point in putting the priority on health rather than disease. And Tony, when you talk about vaccines, a big advocate of vaccines. I spent my life developing vaccines. But I think when we talk about vaccines, it's important that we talk about it with honesty. When we looked at for example, the COVID vaccines, which I was part of Operation Warp Speed, the COVID vaccine should have never been mandated. There's no data to support the concept of mandating that vaccine. The vaccine did not prevent transmission. Its only important role that we've found is that it did prevent serious illness and death for people that were at high risk for serious illness and deaths. And so the vaccine really never should have been recommended, for example, for children. And when certain people, the President Biden and Tony Fauci, said you need to vaccinate your children so they don't infect grandma, that wasn't a truthful statement, because the vaccine did not prevent transmission. And, a lot of these mistakes that were made on the COVID vaccine policies and mandating them obviously have led to what Tony talked about earlier, the importance now to rebuild trust. Because I think a lot of the public health experts really lack now trust, and partially because of what was said, that a lot of these recommendations have been over-influenced by the commercial interest of the private sector, whether it's the food industry or whether it's the vaccine industry. And, what Tony has talked about, the article that just came out where they accuse people like us that question these issues as somehow we're anti-science or we're anti-vaccine. Those are gaslighting terms that are being put out there for a reason, just to stop honest discussion. What Kennedy is for, and what I'm for, and I think the people in MAHA for, is we're for honesty about vaccines. Let's be honest about vaccines toxicity. Let's be honest about vaccine side effects. Let's be honest about vaccine injury. Let's be honest about vaccine efficacy. I agree with Dr. Malone totally. There's absolutely no scientific rationale for us to be vaccinating children for hepatitis B. And yet I hear some very prominent senators will go argue that this is something critical that we do. No, this is a vaccine that would have value for those of us as we get into adolescence and young adulthood, but it really has no role. One of the things that's important is to have honest debate about, whether a vaccine should be used, how it should be used. I'll also say that we don't have a lot of honesty about vaccine injury. Right now, I spend my clinical time taking care of long COVID. And I will tell you, in addition to long COVID, I have a number of patients that have vaccine injury from the mRNA vaccines. And yet these individuals have been told by all their providers on the outside before they get to me that these mRNA vaccines don't cause injury. Well, that's not true. They can cause injury, and we should be honest about them. So I think the key thing that I say about Kennedy and vaccines is I don't think Bobby is anti-vaccine. What I think he's for is honesty about vaccines, honesty about discussions and debates about vaccine safety, vaccine injury, vaccine toxicity, and honesty about the data that we know, do these vaccines work? So I'm happy to be part of this group. As I said, I do think Kennedy is the right man for the right job. I do think he's going to be the most consequential secretary. I think we are on a mission right now to reverse and improve the health of the American people. And it would be great to see, I have 14 grandchildren, and I would like to see that by the time they all get to be the age where they could take a medical exam for the military, that they can all pass it.
Thanks so much, Dr. Redfield. That's such an important point that, there really has been this kind of fake science that's been masquerading as real science. And that what's happening now is that we're rebuilding trust. We're getting back to real science. And that science has to include the ability to question anything, to talk about anything, to look at anything. Let's look at whether a vaccine works. Let's look at what the side effects are. We can look at all of it. That's what the MAHA movement believes. We want to have everybody in. We want to discuss it and debate it till we get to better answers that are going to heal the American public. And one of the people who debates better, who explores more than anybody, is Russell Brand. Just an incredible influencer, thinker, speaker. Thank you for coming on.
How can I possibly not immediately contribute after that? Just driving home, as a matter of fact, Tony, and I was reflecting on my country, the United Kingdom's new introduction of digital IDs and how it's contemporaneous with the introduction of new methods for issuing carbon scores. Some people noted with interest that sandwiches in grocery stores are appearing now with a discrete moniker in the corner near the barcode that says that this is, for example, 8% of your carbon allowance. It's so interesting to me that new metrics and measurements can be introduced in order to make everything quantifiable. In a sane and perhaps holy world, the introduction of carbon scores would mean that we were being responsible about our use of material resources. But in this insane, potentially Luciferian, certainly counterfeit world, the introduction of carbon scoring will certainly be a component of social credit scoring that will be introduced at some point globally if there isn't significant resistance, of which I believe MAHA to be an important part. You mentioned with Dr. Redfield and the phony sense captured the levers of control at the heart of American government. And the reason that phony science has done that, and the reason that only phony science could do that, is because true and authentic science, process of clinical trial, discovery, collaboration, collusion, would always lead to more truth. It fascinated me that by giving commodities carbon scores, we're introducing just another means of measuring and quantifying everything. And I've reflected for a moment, is there biblical precedent or scriptural undergirding for this? And of course there is. You'll all be familiar, I'm sure, even if you're not Christian, with the passage in Revelation that refers to nothing being bought or sold without the mark of the beast. It seems to the most skeptical among us that the pandemic period potentially was a kind of global piloting for increased control. How much control will people tolerate? Will people stay in their homes if you tell them to, particularly if they think it's to the mutual benefit of people, i.e., like many of us obeyed mandates or regulatory suggestions, not out of dumb compliance, but out of a desire to help people. Remember when we were told, for example, that we ought to take vaccines, not just for ourselves, but in order to protect others, to protect people that were more vulnerable. And at the point that we were told that, it wasn't made plain and explicit that there had been no clinical trials to even establish whether vaccines were effective against the transmission of COVID-19. Because, of course, the vaccines were not effective against the transmission of COVID-19. Whatever we will go on to learn about that period, what is obvious is that we were deceived and lied to. And as they say, where interests converge, I hear you, baby. I hear you. No conspiracy is necessary. It's pretty plain that the pharmaceutical industry benefited. It's pretty plain that various regulatory bodies benefited. It's pretty plain that big tech benefited. And it seems to me that in the post-20th century era, where fascism no longer bears fancy moustaches and shiny boots, the new forms of fascism will come masked in care and concern. We need to control you in order to protect you. Of course, care and control are on a spectrum. I care for my children and therefore control them to a degree. But my control is undergirded by love. And I think it's pretty difficult to argue that the controls that were exerted and asserted during the pandemic period were ultimately mobilized by love. Maybe the next political era will have love at its forefront. And that's why, Tony, when you call me, whether I'm driving or merely surviving, I'll pick up the call because of love. Praise the Lord. See you soon.
You always do. Thank you so much. So the next speaker, really gets into the messy world of real science. And he's been, subjected to the despicable corruption. He's been vilified, targeted, attacked, deplatformed. He's been listed as one of the disinformation dozen, which I guess is a real badge of honor these days. But he's a fighter and he can't be kept down. And we're so happy to have him be part of this movement, traveling around the world, going to events everywhere. Thanks so much, Sergi. Thanks for everything you do. And sorry for, all the suffering that you've been subjected to.
Thanks so much, Tony. I wouldn't be in one piece if it weren't for this incredible community and all the great people alongside me, yourself first and foremost. And thank you. So, I look at my own life as a case study in what can happen to an American if they fully exercise their constitutionally protected rights, such as our First Amendment. And I can report to you that there's a historic sea change that has happened, and it's been only quietly acknowledged by YouTube. A month ago, Jim Jordan received a letter from Alphabet CEO stating that they basically deplatformed and censored, countless Americans because of state pressure. And so that was the first time, outside of Zuckerberg a month earlier, acknowledging a similar pattern, that a major big tech vertical, we're talking about trillion-dollar companies, acknowledged that they were essentially laundering the suppression of our constitutional rights on behalf of the government, right, and other NGOs and hidden interested parties to just completely torch our constitutional rights. So what happened was only a few days ago, YouTube acknowledged by restoring my channels that I had never violated community standards. So that's a really important fact because essentially they're acknowledging it was government censorship behind the mask, and millions of Americans face this. So really what we're seeing is those who were put on lists, disfavored speech, Bobby, Dr. Mercola, Tenpenny, myself, those are just the, sort of like those who were pilloried and made an example of so that they could intimidate others. We're actually being restored. And it's not being reported out there yet because I think the implications are so profound. I think they're a little concerned that everyone's going to start asserting their rights again and that we'll have a true renaissance of free speech in this country. And I think a lot of people, that have been part of this movement, you really deserve credit because it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of effort and persistence. First of all, not being completely crushed and croaking is one of them. So after years of, Bobby is the perfect example of this, right? 20 years of not a single positive piece written on him. And yet, clearly, the lesson is that he gets stronger and stronger because the veil's been lifted. People have the least trust that they've ever historically had for the media and through the government until, of course, now we see our own people populating these positions of influence. So it's a really good story about how we are seeing a renaissance in this country of free speech, which is essential for informed medical choice. You can't make informed medical choices if you don't have the information, right? So that's the beauty of what's happened, Tony and everyone, is that we have free speech and bodily sovereignty, and they're the same thing. You have freedom. If you can't control your body, you can let others penetrate it, you don't have freedom, right? All the other civil liberties are just, basically empty promises. So the beauty of it is, and we're going to segue right into Maria next, is that I was able to go to Brussels on behalf of a bunch of grassroots organizations to be able to speak to how excited we are that Europe is actually inspired by MAHA, and it's literally a flame. Like in Europe, where they have much more draconian austerity, and of course, even worse, censorship measures being about to be deployed, we are here representing what is possible. And it's extremely exciting and actually validating of MAHA, because it's not in a political affiliation. It's beyond egos and logos. This is a human movement. It's basic human rights and nonpartisan. And I'm just happy to report that it's uncontrollable. Okay, freedom, joy, health, connection is uncontrollable. And no matter how hard the media tries to do hit pieces and continue to show their cards, we are winning, and it just feels so good to be part of this movement. So can't wait to hear from Maria, who is the founder and president of Make Europe Healthy Again.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So let's go right into Dr. Maria Hübner-Hammog. She is a mental health coach from Austria. She's the founder, as Sarah said, of the Make Europe Healthy Again organization. And she runs conferences and rallies all across Europe. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who spoke before me. And what I think connects us all is that we come true from the heart and we are authentic people. And I think that is very important in these times, because people who listen to us, they feel that with us taking a stand, they can get motivated to also take a stand in their communities. And this is what we need right now. We heard somebody saying already, it was Russell Brand, about the digital ID in the UK. There was a massive protest on Saturday just going on. You wouldn't hear about it in the mainstream media, but our friends and allies were there. And I'm going to report about our first MAHA launch in the EU Parliament, as Sayer pointed out, and he was there as a representative for so many health freedom groups from the United States of America. Thank you again for everybody and all the groups you're representing there. The thing is that we had an MEP from Austria who was kind enough to open the doors for us to have this MAHA launch, which was so important within the EU Parliament. And Robert Malone and also our Chief Medical and Scientific Advisor, Asim Al-Hotra, did amazing keynote speeches there. And I think it is the time that we finally get to talk to MEPs, to politicians from various nations throughout Europe, presenting them our solutions and inviting them to invite us into the national parliaments. And also Make Europe Healthy Again will have a lot of branches, like Make France Healthy Again, Make Italy Healthy Again, Make Great Britain Healthy Again, Make Greece Healthy Again. This is all going to be built, and this is with the spirit of Make America Healthy Again. This is with our spirit from Europe, who that will also probably influence Americans as well. We have a long history of tradition and culture, and especially also traditional medicine here over in Europe. And I do think it's important that we not only talk about the recent and the past years and the recent problems we are facing. I think it's time to engage a lot of people in health solutions for true health. And that is also, and I'm already excited to hear from Joel Salatin, this is about healthy soil. This is about regenerative farming. This is about amazing, courageous courageous farmers who just not do what they are told, who take a stand and who just want to deliver healthy food to the people, because we start with healthy food. We have then healthy microbiomes, and we can definitely from then on protect our children with giving them healthy food. And I know that you always think that the food in Europe is super healthy. It is not. We have the so-called E numbers, which is again the industrial foods, the artificial ingredients. We also have them here. And in my preventative praxis, I informed parents already 10 years ago what not to give their children to eat, so it does not have an impact on their health. So that's an important topic that we will definitely also tackle. And there's another thing like the European Medicine Agency, comparable to the FDA. We definitely need to also have a light on them, because we know that there is corruption, conflict of interest going on, and we definitely should not have people coming from big pharma companies being in the lead, like Emma Cook in the EMA, European Medicine Agency. And there is so much that we can now discuss with politicians who can really take a stand and the lead. And again, I cannot thank enough people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as well as Del Bigtree, who was really the person who made me bold. I was watching the High Wire every week, and I started to organize big manifestations, big rallies here in Austria. And it's people like you who make me brave, who make me take a stand and speak up. And I think a lot of people within Europe are definitely positively influenced by what is coming from the nation with freedom of speech still in place. So thank you for all that you're doing for us. And I hope we can help and give back a lot of good work from our people and scientists we have here in Europe. And I want to make one statement. Also, the MAHA movement, especially the doctors and scientists, they definitely want to make a stand to show that we back Bobby, and we definitely have his back when it comes to saying here's a lot of doctors that definitely stand behind him as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's so important to recognize that this is a global problem. I'm not quite sure that that freedom of speech has been, that perfect in the U.S. as Sayer was saying. But we've been fighting very hard to bring back freedom of speech, and that's such a big part of the MAHA movement. Next up, we have Joel Salatin. I'm sure you've all heard of him. He is a legendary advocate for farmers and for healthy farming. So great to have you on. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Tony, and it's such a privilege and an honor to be with all of you. I've thought hard and long about what I could bring in 4 minutes to this group. We've got the soybean issue. We've got can we feed the world? We've got the industry is pushing back that compost certainly can't feed the world. But I thought that I would like to just share with the group a couple of personal stories here at our farm, Polyface in Virginia, where we have been for 65 years. Raising livestock, domestic livestock, without pharmaceuticals and vaccines, except a couple of times. And I think this perhaps creates a little bit of nuanced discussion and might be just helpful for all of us to think about. So you got to realize in my lifetime, we've raised literally millions of pigs, chickens, cows, sheep, rabbits, turkeys, all sorts of things. And so in a lot of ways, I have a very unique perspective, observationally, experientially, with a lot of individuals, perhaps way more than doctors do, with humans. And I don't want to say animals are humans, but they are. They do talk and walk and move around and respond to things. And so let me just say quickly that in my career, we've had about six outbreaks of what would be called an epizootic, a disease outbreak. And every single time they have been my fault. And so it has made me believe that nature's default position is wellness. And if things aren't well, the first question is, well, what did I do to make nature dysfunctional? Rather than they must be pharmaceutically disadvantaged. And so nothing gets sick because it's pharmaceutically disadvantaged. So let me give you very briefly 2 times when vaccines actually helped us. And I hope this helps the discussion. The first one was one year we had a lady who asked us to raise 500 pullets for her. She wanted to go in the laying chicken business. She didn't want to raise the chicks, so she said, would you raise them for me? I'll get them when they start laying. Great. So we raised these chicks for her. They got ready to lay, and I called her and said, come pick them up. And she said, well, I changed my mind. I don't want them. Well, we didn't have any place to go with them. Our brooder got crowded. And we had a terribly wet, damp, cold spring. We had to put them out quicker because we needed brooder space for our broilers that were coming for us, that we were going to raise for us. Make a long story short, these birds got incredibly stressed. They got cold. They were not clean. We pushed them. We stressed them in the brooder. And they got Marek's disease, which a vaccine was created for Marek's back in the early 1900s, because it was a very, very common chicken disease in the burgeoning, the beginning of the industrial, egg laying business. And so we vaccinated our chicks for 3 years after that. Didn't have another issue, and we've never used a vaccine since. It's been 25 years, never had another chicken with Marek's. We just did that on a protective way. The second was a group of calves that we took to a new rental farm that was full of brambles and briars, and the owner didn't want us to cut the brambles and briars because he wanted habitat for rabbits and chickens and stuff. So we started putting the salt box, the mineral box, out in the brambles to stomp them out and do our own kind of rehab position. And we lost a couple of calves. 500-pound calves. And so we had to vet out, and they had blackleg. And this is, again, something that all farmers vaccinate for. We never have. But we lost 3 or 4 calves, and that gets to be expensive. And so we got the herd in, we vaccinated them, didn't lose another one. But I looked in my old books behind me. I collect these old ag books, and I found out that blackleg is caused by a ubiquitous protozoa that enters the body through puncture wounds from brambles. And so we mowed the brambles, and now 20 years later, we've never had another section of blackleg and never vaccinated. So this is a nuance of vaccine, I think, that maybe we don't discuss enough. And just to encourage everyone that I'm not a blanket anti-vaxxer, but I think that generally that using them as a preventive when there's not an issue is certainly keeps us from ever finding answers to problems that would happen, and we can make management changes, decisions otherwise to keep things healthy.
Thanks so much, Joel. Really, really helpful. It's so important to recognize that, big pharma, big food, big ag, they're anti-science because they want to freeze a corrupt corporate kind of science at a point that maximizes their profits. Change is really bad for profits. Questioning science is really bad for profits. And, so the MAHA movement may be bad for profits for these companies. And, one of the people who really is looking at what's going on with food, really just looking closely at everything that big food companies have done to poison the American public is Vani Hari. And I'm so grateful for the work that she does, and great to have you on again. We can't quite hear you.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm so glad to be here today to shed some light on some new information that I got about a front group that I talked about last week. One of the most core pinnacle moments of the last year has been this local grassroots state action happening in dozens of states across the nation. States like Arizona and Louisiana and Texas and West Virginia and California, all coming together and enacting meaningful legislation to reform food chemicals, whether that's getting artificial food dyes banned outright, like in West Virginia, or getting 40 different chemicals having a warning label in Texas, or, in California, getting ultra processed foods out of school lunches. every single one of these states has been instrumental in forcing the food companies' hands and getting these chemicals out, stopping this practice of how American companies are poisoning us with ingredients they don't use in other countries, but use here in the United States, and highlighting this issue that over 10,000 chemicals are allowed in our food supply, whereas in other countries, it's a lot less. And this has been the momentum that Secretary Kennedy has caused with the leadership that he's put with President Trump at the highest levels, and emboldened these state legislators to do this type of work, and has been celebrating these governors across the nation for doing this work. And now we are up against a huge fight, and the real fight begins because the food industry is mobilizing. And they've created a new front group. It's called the Americans for Ingredient Transparency. If you want to read all about it, you can go to foodbabe.com. I just released a blog post all about this. It's the first blog post on the site. But this specific front group is something that is being funded by every single major food company and Farm Bureau and just about every restaurant association, the Soybean Association. And Joel, you would appreciate that. The different organizations that don't want to see the status quo change. And they're coming with this ad campaign that's shamelessly featuring MAHA moms and showing that Americans want change in the food industry and they want a national standard. Of course we do, but what they want to do is strip states and local grassroots efforts and reverse anything that has happened in the last year and make it impossible for states to safeguard their citizens. So this is reform that's masquerading for control. So what we want to do is basically actually the reverse of that. So control, basically they are trying to control the national conversation now on food chemicals, and they're looking for senators to do their bidding in Washington, and they're using the MAHA momentum, for their marketing purposes. So I just want to make sure everyone knows about this group. Consumer Reports came out very clear and saying that this group is completely shameful and misleading, showing that this is, they're using the X handle at Safe Ingredients, for example, to show that they're, have these humble and noble causes. But what they're trying to do is stop states' rights. So I think it's really important that when a front group like this is formed, we are educated early on what they're doing and how their lobbying efforts are happening in Washington. And we can inform our senators and our congresspeople in Washington all about this so that they know that we know that this is being funded by the food industry and trying to stop the momentum of all of this amazing change that's happening at the local level. Thank you so much, Tony and team.
Thanks so much, Vani. Yeah, it's such an important point that so much of the information that masquerades as real science is just bought and paid for by the companies that profit from it. Like these front companies Vani just mentioned, like Dr. Mike that Dr. Berg mentioned. So this is really critical to what's going on, that these people are lying to us, and the MAHA movement is bringing you accurate information. Next up, we have Dr. Josh Axe. He's a doctor of chiropractic medicine, doctor of natural medicine, a clinical nutritionist. He's the co-founder of the CVO of Ancient Nutrition, CVO of Ancient Nutrition, founder of Draxe.com, DRAXE.com, and founder of the Health Institute. He's an incredible writer, the best-selling author of Think This, Not That, Eat Dirt, Keto Diet, and Ancient Remedies. Thanks so much for coming on, Josh.
Tony, hey, thanks so much for having me. Well, hey, it's such an honor to be here today. And it's an incredible group of people that have come together to make America healthy again. And again, I'm so honored to be a part of it. This was quite a few years ago when I was speaking at the Autism One conference that Jenny McCarthy was putting on, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And that was the first time I really got to speak with him. And I can remember thinking back to just how impressed I was with how much he cared. And that's one of the things I can say about everyone here that I've heard speak today. And I know so many of you who are tuning in right now is that we care. You know, there was an audio file as well of RFK talking about how if he could just help one child with autism, what that would mean to him. Because, and I can share this as well, you know, I had my mom taught special ed growing up. So I was constantly being exposed to and playing with other kids who had developmental delays and autism and other issues, and just seeing how it impacted their lives and their parents made me want to help as well. And I wanted to just go through a little research today and just share a few things that we can do proactively. And this is something I know so many of you have done. I know I've seen Dr. Pomp and Dr. Berg and others speak about this as well. But it's switching to these natural remedies and getting more and becoming more educated about the side effects of medications. Most people don't realize this, but there isn't a single drug that doesn't have a side effect, that doesn't deplete at least some nutrient from the body. Even things like metformin, of course, statin drugs, they're pulling vitamin B12 and coenzyme Q10 and numerous other nutrients. Birth control pills are depleting the body of vitamin 2, B3, B9, B12, selenium, zinc, and causing hypothyroidism. So we're seeing that so many of these drugs being at the forefront rather than these natural remedies is part of what's making us sick as well. And, you know, and one of the most recent things in the news, and one of the things I was so grateful for, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his colleagues and Donald Trump for bringing to the forefront is the side effects of Tylenol during pregnancy and its connection to autism. Now, this is something that many of you I've heard speak on and talk about for many, many years. But I want to go through one statistic here, or a few statistics. One is this. This is the most accurate data we have on this from the Pediatric Perinatal Epidemiology Journal in 2019. They found that a large U.S. study found that 62% of pregnant women reported using acetaminophen or Tylenol sometime during their pregnancy. Think about that. 62% of women, when they're pregnant, take Tylenol because they didn't know the potential side effects. Now, one of the things that we know that Tylenol does, or acetaminophen, is it decreases glutathione in the body over time. That is your body's master antioxidant. And one study found this, that acetaminophen causes, on average, a 53% decrease in glutathione intracellularly in macrophages and 34% decrease in another type of immune cell called pneumocytes. And so we see this being a connection here with 62% of women using Tylenol during pregnancy. We now have a correlation with autism, and we see these numbers continue to increase. We've also seen Tylenol, I didn't think it would be this high, but between 2006 and 2015, over a period of 9 years, there was a 53% increase in use of Tylenol. And you think about also how the autism rates have increased. And the reality is there are absolutely natural alternatives that also have other health benefits like turmeric. In fact, turmeric in studies comparing it to acetaminophen had not quite as great of benefits, but had many benefits for relieving pain and headaches and other symptoms that women take Tylenol for. And in one study, taking turmeric, now this was an animal study, but they showed a 50% increase in glutathione levels, which is going to protect kids likely, again, this is hypothetically, against autism in that way. And so again, just us being able to educate people on use this, not that, use turmeric instead of Tylenol has great benefits. And one of the things I'm really excited about as well is just continuing to get the message out there that within natural medicine, functional medicine, within organic farming, with what we're doing here as part of the MAHA movement, there are natural alternatives. People have been lied to for so long where they've been told this. I mean, I know any of you guys that are doctors hear this constantly. You'll have patients come in and they will tell you, well, my doctor told me that I have to be on this medication and for the rest of my life, and that my condition is irreversible. The reality is that when we're using food as medicine, lifestyle medicine, organic farming, when we're getting food dyes out, when we are addressing things, which other things I'm excited about with this movement is making peptides fully legal, making stem cell therapy fully legal, and getting more access and the truth out there about natural remedies like turmeric, we can help heal people. We can get people access to things that we're truly going to help them heal and that aren't going to have these serious side effects there as well. So again, I'm so honored here. And again, one of the reasons why I felt so strongly about being part of this MAHA movement is friends of mine like Vani leading the charge, and also knowing, again, everyone on this call. I think one of the differences, and I'm not saying that conventional doctors and pharmaceutical company executives don't care at all. I think some of them do care. But I think the people on these calls, and many of you attending this call, you care deeply about helping people, as I do, as RFK does, as all of us do. And if we can see just prevent one case of autism and help one person reverse that chronic illness, it makes it all worth it. And we're going to be able to impact millions and millions of lives. So again, excited to be part of this movement.
Thanks so much, Josh. Just so many great points there. I mean, it really is shocking that 62% of pregnant women, based on what we know now, have been taking Tylenol. So, the point that is really salient there is that we can get things wrong. We can make historic mistakes. We have to look at those. We have to challenge, what doctors say, what scientists say. That's what real science is. We can do better. We can be healthier. We can change our lives. We can transform our lives, and we can transform this country. So I think that's so important. What we've been engaging in here today is real science, where people disagree, where people say things that contradict the status quo. That's exactly what we want Secretary Kennedy to do. That's what we want our government to do. That's what we want all of our scientists to do. So before we go, I just wanted to mention a few quick things. We're making incredible progress, but we need to keep on fighting. And one of the ways that we hope that you will do that is to go to mahaaction.com, look at the new legislative tracker that allows you to take action on every MAHA bill all around the country, look at it state by state. We're gaining so much traction, and we're changing people's minds. So we have just tens of millions of people are changing their mind about fundamental things. So the government hasn't in the past kept up with those changes, but we are getting through to so many people. So it's more important than ever to use the power of social media. Keep posting, keep liking, keep commenting. The mainstream media is trying to drag us back. They're calling us all these things, anti-science, conspiracy theorists. We discussed that today. We know that isn't true. We know those are corporate, talking points. Those are big pharma talking points, big food talking points. So we can do better. We can help people learn the truth, and we can keep pushing forward. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the MAHA report. It's got great articles every day now, day after day. We've got all kinds of people coming in, different perspectives. Finally, next week, we'll be sending out short surveys, and we want to hear from everybody on this call, all the people listening. We'll share the details of what those surveys show on the next call. So, the movement keeps growing stronger and stronger every day, and we can shape policy. Policy can shape people. But, much of it has to be grassroots. It's always had to be grassroots. It's all around the world, like we heard, from the MAHA movement. So thank you so much for all that you're doing, for being a part of the fight, for protecting children's health. And we'll see you all again next week. Thanks so much.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
There's a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.